Good evening to all of you. The Boarding Schools Association of India has been formed spontaneously to serve the needs of purely boarding schools, private boarding schools, which are very different in character to day schools and to day-come boarding schools. For example, the requirement from staff is far more comprehensive, with an emphasis on pastoral care, co-curricular activities, and service. Character building and good citizenship is the aim of such schools. The lead to form the association has been taken by some of the world's best legacy schools, and today we hope to share with you the growing relevance of boarding schools and the views of our eminent panelists, whom I shall now introduce to you. Dr. Jagpreet Singh is headmaster of the Doon School, which has provided India with students who have inculcated a spirit of enterprise and adventure. Its Old Boys Association continues to provide humanitarian service whenever there is a social or economic crisis in the country. Then we have Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni, PVSM, retired. He's an old student of the legacy school he is now head of as director. The Mayo College has produced many distinguished old students over the years, over the past almost 150 years. Many of them have proven records of service to the nation. Miss Sangeeta Kain, a lady principal of an old boys school, Welham Boys School, and its sister school, Welham Girls, have evolved into amongst the best schools in the country, with alumni who have achieved great distinction. Mr. Bhavin Shah needs no introduction for anyone in the field of education. He is Director and CEO of EducationWorld, a director of its humanitarian development magazines. There are many organizations ranking schools in India, and EducationWorld is definitely the most respected of these. Bhavin is on the panel to provide us with a professional outsider's view. So my first question I will direct to Jagpreet. Jagpreet, a synergy of passion, ability, and opportunity can lead a child to having a lifelong hobby and sometimes even a career. How do boarding schools provide greater opportunities to discover passion?
Thank you, Dr. Sumer, and good evening to all the viewers. Very relevant question to the boarding school. And I think the word passion goes for every person who's been associated with a boarding life. In fact, if I may say, boarding schools are the land of opportunities. When the young boys and girls come to the school unaware of their interest, unaware of the talent, unaware of the opportunities what the land has to offer. And that's the time a child discovers the interest in a particular field. And that's where the child puts in all the effort and realizes that the passion is overflowing to which he has never or she has never explored. Coming into the boarding school life, as I said earlier, is a land of opportunities. Why? Because boarding school evolves around the child and takes a journey of a child, whatever years, to transform him or her into a great outcome of the child when he or she passes out. It's wonderful to realize that the ability of the child is so important to understand here. Every child is a unique child. Every child, what I always say, is a special child. A boy and a girl, whenever come to the school, they come into the land of opportunities. They try to explore what are they good at. They play all seasonal games. They do all activities. They enter into all sort of community service and then develop an interest. And sometimes it so happens that in a boarding school environment, it becomes so passionately involved that the passion becomes their careers and they choose this line as their career options. This is where I was talking about the boarding schools. Boarding schools are mainly Three, as what Dr. Sumer earlier did say, academics definitely is the most important core subject. B, the most important is the pastoral care. How he or she learns to live in a space and then dwell further with confidence. But the most important is, how does a child gain interest and also understands to utilize the space and time? This is where community service, activities, sports come in. This is a platform which is available to a child 24/7. There are no time bounds. There are no restrictions of space. A child in an afternoon, in fact, I would have a liberty to say that actual boarding school life begins after 1:30. Till 1:30, it's like a normal school. But what happens after 1:30 is really a boarding school activity, a life of the school and a master, which actually evolves around the child. If I may be able to understand what is the learning outcome of the child from the first exam the child has taken in the school to the last exam the child has taken. So the first exam the child takes in the school is the admission test. And the last test a child takes in the school is the last board exam. Between the two evaluation, what is the journey of the child? What is the learning curve? What has been the transformational journey of the child is what boarding school provides. Unlike of day schools, when a child goes back at 1:30 and then comes for a periodic games, or even the PE lessons are integrated in the timetable. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this does not happen in boarding school. If you ask anyone, what are they mostly learning? 80% of the learning comes to a child after 1:30. And that is what the passion of the child is. That is where the different abilities of the children come in. And that is where the opportunities come in. And when all these three actually collate together, it makes a very meaningful, a very transformational, and a very important outcome of his journey, which he takes out from the school and enters into the university. I hope I've justified your question, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagpreet. That was very, very clear. I would now like to ask General Kulkarni. Sir, would you agree that boarding schools are a real representation of secularism and of the culture of India?
Thank you, sir. Greetings to the fellow panelists and to everybody on this program. At the very outset, let us understand that culturally, India is like a continent. And therefore, it is a mix of people of different ethnicities, different religions, different backgrounds, different ancestries. And the place where all these can come together at one place is a boarding school. In a day school, perforce the clientele has to be local. And therefore, the day-to-day exposure of children to the cultural diversity of our country, and in many cases, boarding schools also have in residence students from overseas who may be NRI children or could even be from other nationalities. There is this famous saying that India represents truly unity in diversity, and a boarding school's demography of its students says this in simple terms. And therefore, let us say today, if you are based around the northern part of the country, we all know about the important festivals we recently had. Today is Hanuman Jayanti, and there are various other festivals happened recently. How many of us know the major festivals of, say, Manipur or Nagaland, or similar festivals in Tamil Nadu or Kerala? There was Vishu just 2 days ago. So my point is, our children get to hear of it, get to know of it, get to experience it because of their colleagues who are with them. And therefore, the cultural heritage is something which doesn't have to be imposed on the children. It is part of their day-to-day work. There is also the shared bond of a community. And therefore, it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what language you spoke back home. Over the years, you'll land up into a polyglot kind of environment where everybody mutually respects each other. And these relationships go on literally for a lifetime and sometimes generationally. I think all legacy boarding schools are very proud of the fact that they have successive generations studying in their school. Today, I say with great pride that we have a couple of children who are sixth generation students. So there is a degree of traditional perspective, there is a degree of community perspective, there is a degree of globalized perspective. And in today's times, being a global citizen is necessary for a country like India, which is making its mark all over the world. Coming on to the issue of secularism, all legacy boarding schools have a practice of non-discrimination of any kind. And therefore, we have students of all religions. And India can truly boast of this, that we have people of all religions, including some of the smaller religions, population-wise like Judaism and many others. And within India itself, there are many sects. For example, we have Jain students who are Digambars, who are Shetambars, and similarly, you can go on. And secularism, which is enshrined in our constitution, becomes a part of our daily living. And therefore, we celebrate each other's festivals with the same gusto as we celebrate our own. And in fact, parents tell us that I didn't know that my son knew so much about various other festivals, various other cultures, various other religions, which has come to bear on my child in your school. Therefore, it's very important that the language of a boarding school, and I don't mean literally the language, but the lingua franca of a boarding school resonates with cultural diversity and secularism in every single action that takes place. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, General. Thank you. That was very, very enlightening. Sangeeta, do you believe that staff training, especially in the area of pastoral care, needs to go well beyond the current curriculum in teacher training colleges? And how will BSAI fill this vacuum?
Good afternoon, good evening, sir. Thank you so much, and good evening to everybody. When it comes to boarding schools, our teacher training institutes, I believe, fall very short of what they are supposed to do. Whether we look at the Central Institute of Education or we look at the Regional Institute of Education, where people actually go to become teachers out of choice and not by chance. Pastoral care and aspects of boarding school are completely missing from their curriculum. We have about 600 plus Navodayas in the country. We have about 30 plus Sainik schools, and add to that hundreds of boarding schools, private boarding schools. But when you look at teacher training, we are just not bothered about training teachers to join boarding schools. I can understand subject training, I can understand co-curricular, I can understand physical education, but the most important and the core point of any boarding school is pastoral care. And that is where I feel that all teacher training institutes are falling short. Now, what happens in a boarding school, since all of us are boarding school people here, what happens in a boarding school is that unless the child is emotionally, socially, mentally looked after, there is no learning that is going to happen. First and foremost, the child has to feel safe and secure. And the pastoral care is omnipresent in all aspects of a boarding school. As Dr. Jagpreet rightly said, the boarding life starts only after 1:30. And are we training our teachers to handle that life? We are not. Are we training teachers to be housemasters? Are we training teachers to be, house mothers? Are we in our teacher training institutes teaching teachers that, yes, please pick up a hobby, please pick up a sport which you can play with the child in the evening. So none of that is happening. We can put structures in place, we can put systems in place, we can have tutorial groups, all that can happen. However, and that's what BSAI is going to do. It's going to handhold schools that are willing to come to BSAI to be trained, to train its teachers. However, it is the intangibles that worry me, and it is the lack of training in the intangibles that worries me. For example, how trained am I, or how have I been trained in the teacher training institutes to handle a child who is probably being bullied? Do I know what are the signs where I can see that probably a child has been bullied? Or is he into substance abuse? Or is he going through certain biological changes where he needs my help? We are not talking about such things. And in boarding schools, unless you are trained to handle such things, you are going to fail miserably. So no, our teacher training institutes are not looking after the teacher training for boarding schools. And the BSAI, this is where our strength lies. This is where we are going to train teachers, because we have a history of a whole lot of successes and probably certain amount of failure too. We have case studies where we haven't been able to succeed. Why did we not succeed? A school in Tamil Nadu may probably be different from a school in Dehradun. But if we are able to share our success stories as well as our challenges, then we are going to be able to train that school to be able to probably make at least not the same mistakes as we made. Are we going to be able to train their pastoral care staff? Are we going to be able to share with them our systems, our formats, what makes us what we are? So I think where the teacher training institutes have failed in training teachers for especially the boarding schools, that is where I think BSAI will have a huge, huge role to play. That is where we will strengthen the boarding school culture in India. I hope, sir, I've been able to.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. You've made it very clear that a child has to be happy to actually learn. And it is our job to make sure that the child is happy and not suffering from something which we are unaware of. Thank you very much. I now turn to Bhavin. Bhavin, we know that today's parents can be hyper vigilant and want to be involved in every aspect of their child's school life. Hence the terms helicopter mother and lawnmower mother. Can boarding schools be the perfect antidote?
Good evening, sir, and good evening to all my gurus. I'm very excited from the time BSAI is formed. It was the topic is need of the hour, and BSAI was the need of an hour, because India definitely need good boarding schools, which we have, and a lot of attention to the boarding schools, which is now much deserved. Sir, today's day and time at Saturday, typically EducationWorld's office in Mumbai gets flooded with parents, and typically in a metro environment, I get this kind of a parent where a kid will also come to the office, and particularly parent will talk for 30 minutes and kid would hardly express something for 2 minutes. And that's what I've been witnessing, the metro environment, which is getting cluttered, competitive, and too much of herd mentality. Largely, a very pertinent question that you have asked, that boarding school could be a perfect antidote. Yes, because according to me, there are three major points that a parent of a metro environment or a day school environment should just look into it. I'm not trying to compare saying the day schools or the decision taken by a parent of a day school is bad. But I think so when they look at boarding school, they should look at holistically what all boarding school can really give it to them. First and most important, which every parent would love, is the independence. The independence might be the greatest gift that a parent can give to their children. See, children are required to navigate through elements, all their elements, doing their own laundry, getting up in the morning, which typically in a day school, or for that matter, a metro parent, is always hand-holding and doing that so-called helicopter nature to make that child go through in each and every walk of life, which is not the case in boarding. And that's something boarding teaches, and it's a good place to fail and succeed, which makes them a great place to learn. And it's a controlled freedom that a boarding school gives it to them. See, typically a kid don't just get into college, they arrive prepared to succeed when they come from boarding. They become strong individual, capable of leadership, and have self-initiative. They're challenged to develop their interpersonal skills because there is no hiding at boarding schools, right? Typically in a metro environment, you will see a mom is going to pick up at 3 o'clock, as Dr. Jagpreet was also mentioning. They develop somewhere peer skills less than what a child is there 24 hours on the campus. Boarding school is also like a transformative experience, in learning to communicate with others, something a lot of people don't get it unless they get into the colleges. So my first clear point is learning independence, understanding priorities at boarding school is what a boarding school gives. Secondly, there are strong academic opportunities and sense of community and personal growth. See, largely what I've seen from an outside point of view, obviously you have been running the schools since decades and decades and legacy schools. The outlook of a teacher, typically when a teacher comparison happens, the outlook of teacher at boarding schools regarding their position isn't that just as a job, but it's more of a vocation, because they become an important role model in each of their students' life. I mean, I've heard stories where teacher would work with students, share meals, often live on campus, making it very difficult environment to duplicate anywhere else. It's very difficult, right? And it's not just the great history teacher or a math teacher, but I've heard largely when I visit a lot of boarding schools, it's about that time in the wilderness, the dorm life, the memorable moments. That's a bond which actually makes with men and boys or women and girls. And that's like a different altogether, a culture that is set up. And lastly, it prepares for life after school. I think so. Both the panelists really mentioned saying, while the education experience at the boarding school is important to personal and educational growth and development, but according to me, it's also a precursor to life after school. See, research has shown that boarding school students feel more prepared for college and university than their peers, and more likely to earn more advanced degrees and advance more prominent roles in their careers and communities. So in all, I think so learning independence, strong academic opportunity, and preparation for life after school is something that the so-called helicopter parents should understand and give more wings to the boarding school life, which in the time of pandemic, it's a perfect antidote, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bhavin. I think that was fantastic coming from an outside expert. Also, I think I could add that, the crutch of tuitions does not exist in boarding schools, whereas it does very much so in the cities. Thank you. Back to Jagpreet. Jagpreet, why has BSAI partnered with Boarding Schools Association of UK? And do you see a growth in teacher and student exchanges both within the country and externally?
Thank you for this lovely question, sir. I have no doubt in my mind when I will answer this question that why BSAI had to integrate with the objectives of the BSA. They both have common objectives. And when we are talking about the student community, my heart bleeds when Sangeeta was saying that our masters need to be prepared to prepare the generation of tomorrow. My question is, we keep talking about 21st century skills, but how many of us are prepared to endeavor the 21st century skills and experimenting and going towards the attainment of ultimate goal of the school? My question is, why BSAI has been accepted by BSA? That is very, very clear. BSA understands the depth of boarding school education in India. They have mastered over it in UK. Before joining the BSAI, I was a member of the Boarding School Association of UK. They were very clear with their objectives. What is the purpose of getting out of the boarding schools? When they have schools like Eton, they have schools like Charterhouse, Wellington, Loreto, all top schools are the boarding schools. And all the top people who are serving in the top rank of the work come from these boarding schools. This now needs to come into India. There are many objectives why BSA has accepted the BSAI now to be scaffolded. And we are very happy to be scaffolded by BSA, because one of the reasons what you mentioned, Dr. Sumer, is why would our teachers then start with an exchange with BSA and BSAI? I'll give you a small example of myself. When I was teaching at Mayo, and we never had this sort of an opportunity where BSA or HMC or any other organization would give you an opportunity of an exchange program. I remember going to Eton on an exchange teacher. And those 6 months when I completed at Eton and I came back, I was not the same teacher. I had transformed my thinking. And as Sangeeta had put in a word, I was a teacher who came with choice. It was not by chance. So a teacher by choice got an opportunity of going on an exchange, taking a risk of coming out of the comfort zone, exploring the unknown, and learning and coming back quite a few things unlearned, and then relearning it, coming back and reflecting on your experience. In Doon School, when we start with this, there are two very beautiful attributes we work on. One is students can be teachers, because students are the digital natives. They are the today's generation. We need to learn from them. But the teachers can be learners. This is a very important attribute. And nothing learning can be more permanent and can be more enriching only if we travel out of our comfort zones, keenness to learn, and going on an exchange to another school, unlike of ours, study the system, be a part of their system, and then adopting the changes. The story does not end here. The boarding school teacher who's been on an exchange has to come back, do an unlearning process for the community, make them relearn of the experience what he has got from the other school where he has traveled, and then create an environment of mutual growth, mutual development, and collaboration. I only see when Bhavin had said, we need to prepare children for the life after schools. That can only happen when these teachers go on exchange to BSS schools. They go to schools of UK. They travel to Oxford. They travel to Cambridge. They also get a program on higher education, how their children are breaking into the universities, how their college applications work. This is not only classroom teaching. We are teaching the children for tomorrow to actually prepare them for the life after school. And that can only happen, which I truly acknowledge, with the system of what BSA has established. Today, when all the schools become the members of BSAI, they automatically become the member of BSA. And what does BSA get out of that? BSA gets more number of schools and opens an opportunity for more teachers to come to UK, study the pattern in UK, study the systems in UK, and send their teachers into India and gather information from India and collaborate with the two. And this thesis and antithesis will give birth to synthesis. That is what we are looking for 21st century. And I think this is how
much. Thank you so much, Jagpreet. Thank you. General Kulkarni, it is said that the British Empire was built on the playing fields of Eton. It is also said that Mayo College is the Eton of the East. How does this pertain to character building in boarding schools?
Well, sir, the phrase of Eton is actually to be taken metaphorically rather than literally. Eton is a symbol of leadership, and leadership under stress, leadership when you're lonely and alone, leadership when you don't have someone to fall back on, and good leadership under these circumstances can only be based on a foundation of strong ethical character. So it is a symbolic thing, but a very important thing. And therefore, how does a boarding school contribute to this idea of building character? And as Dr. Jagpreet has said initially, there are essentially three streams: the academics, co-curriculars, and sports. But they're all resting on the foundation of character. Without that, the rest of the pillars will crumble. Now, we are having a lot of educators on our audience, so they would all know what are the traits of character. But to keep it simple for them, I have decided to make an sort of alliterative list. And the first symbol of character is trust. You have to, if you are sending a child to a boarding school, it starts on the principle of trust. How would you send your child far away in the care of somebody else if you didn't trust them? And the fact that over the years, the boarding schools have attracted some of the best students, and our schools who are represented on this panel can say with great pride about this, is because there is trust, and trust that goes on across generations. The second thing is, when a child comes to a boarding school, there is this what we say in 21st century skills as collaboration, but traditionally we call it teamwork. And the teamwork is not only amongst the students. The teamwork is between the parents and the school. They are our partners. They are not the paymasters of the children. And therefore, collectively, we supplement and complement those aspects of parenting which the parents are unable to do at home. So we become the in loco parentis for them. The third is the issue of tradition. India is a society steeped very deeply in tradition, and we should be proud of it. Mutual respect, being sensitive to other people's concern. Today, this word is flaunted around, empathy, but I think it was built into the basic system of our family fabric. So therefore, tradition is again very important. Having a sense of community, as I said, with all our diversities, you got to have the other fourth T, which is tolerance. You have to have tolerance. And when you live in a confined place in a boarding school for years on end, and you live in the same dormitory, you have to develop tolerance. You can't just have it your way. You can't be that sulking kid at home, it's my way or the highway kind of guy. So you learn tolerance in a very nice, communal, easy way over the years. You learn. The other thing is the importance of time. Today in the digital era, time has become even more important. The concept of punctuality, the concept of respecting the other person's time. So time is something which gets built into the daily routine. And for the range of activities that a boarding school provides, actually 24 hours is less. So as kids grow up, they learn to smartly manage their time. They spend less time on their personal matters, less time on frivolous things, and try and focus on the range of opportunities that boarding schools provide them. And finally, what this results in, taking the name of a movie, which was famous when I was younger, called True Grit. And there is a very famous TED talk which says that of all the qualities that were found in people who became leaders later on in life, the one thing that stood out was grit. So I think true grit is what a boarding school leaves with a child if he avails of the good things here. And therefore, because some of these things which I've said cannot be fully provided at home, hence the importance of a boarding school. Now, when we were young, Dr. Sumer, myself and all, we were in boarding school ourselves. It was a matter of circumstance. Today, it is a matter of choice. And often people ask me, what will my son become if he goes to this great legacy school or a boarding school? It is not what he will become. It is what you will provide to him in his growing years. What platform will you set him up on which he launches himself or herself into the unknown world of tomorrow? So this is what I feel, sir, is where boarding schools come down very strongly on providing you a base of your character, which sets you going for the rest of your life.
Thank you so much, General. That was really, really beautifully put. Sangeeta, with this new education policy, do you see the QET, the CUET, QET exams as an opportunity for boarding schools?
Most definitely, sir. I think the CUET, what it's trying to do is that it's trying to move away from the rat race. It's actually trying to bring the school system back into preparing a student to learn for the joy of learning rather than just focusing on the marks that he or she gets at the end of the graduating year. Now, as far as boarding schools are concerned, uh, we've seen classic cases where boys who or girls who've been very voracious, good at English, have been voracious readers, have somehow always, and this is a particular example I'm giving you, have always ended up getting very few marks in English. And I'm just taking one subject. Now, what happens is that in a boarding school, when a child is learning, he's reading, he loves reading, he's encouraged to read, and he enjoys reading, with the result that the CBSE grade 12 English curriculum does not challenge him at all. Now, what happens is that while he is great at English, he does not get marks. Now, what's going to happen in CUET is it's going to move beyond the books. It's going to give him more opportunity to put his skill at use. He will be, as in boarding schools, rather than just the marks, what's happening is we are giving them opportunities to research, to discuss, to deliberate. The greatest advantage as of today, or any time we've had, is that we have the luxury of time. Vis-a-vis a day school student who has too many distractions, who is forever at conflict with his parents because he wants to be on the gadgets all the time. The last 2 years, we've seen that though we have depended on technology, the missing element has been the human touch, and the child has not been able to learn as much as he does in physical spaces. However, in day school, what happens is that there is this conflict between the parent and the child all the time, where he is glued to his gadget, impacting his learning. Secondly, even if he has to go for tuitions, as you said, the kind of time he's spending on the road, going and coming, Mumbai, Gurgaon, the whole of NCR, he's probably spending about 3 hours on an average on the road. Where is he? He's not only losing time, he is also coming back home tired. So these kind of advantages that are available to us in boarding schools give the child an extra edge when it comes to learning beyond books. Also, our teacher-student ratio is brilliant. I mean, we have about one teacher over about 11, 12 students. So this learning that happens in closer groups, in smaller groups, the peer learning that happens, the learning that happens through your seniors, the discussions that you have with your seniors, the quizzes after dinner, the debates after dinner, the time that you spend on discussions, I think that is what is going to give us an edge as far as CUET is concerned. Yes, we have students from all over the country, from Dumka to Begusarai to Siliguri to Hyderabad. We have students. Some students have the opportunities of great schools at home. Some students do not. So when they come to us, they are given the opportunity of a lifetime. They are prepared to understand why they are doing what they are doing. They become learners for life. They become independent learners. They are not dependent on a tuition teacher or a mother or a father waking them up at 4:30 in the morning. They learn because they want to learn. And that is what the crux of the CUET is going to be. Are you a learner?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Bhavin, given the legacy and substantial resources of our boarding schools, can BSAI become a medium of interaction with world-class schools and universities, according to you?
Sir, from the time BSAI was formed, I was envying a couple of stuff. First and foremost, coming from Mumbai and Bangalore, and the kind of schools typically, what I witness in Mumbai is like in an acre, you have 5,000 students. In an apartment of less than an acre, you have like more than 1,000 families. And whereas when I look at residential schools and particularly legacies, we just talk about acres and acres. And that's where I was always of this opinion that the strong collaboration is needed, or it's a need of an hour, where a collaboration of not only academics, but all round collaboration, which can be invited And on the other side, BSAI can play a strong role. See, what has happened is, unlike in universities and unlike in various other of the industry, you have seen that industry to industry there are collaboration that are happening. In universities, you will see, say for example, like Ashoka would have Yale, Stanford collaboration in the academic side, on teacher training side, and so on and so forth. I think so. There are some good points that BSAI can initiate. So number one is something. If suppose BSAI I can also open collaboration where they can collaborate with schools of various sections for various expertise. Say, for example, a teacher training is also collaborated with a day school or a day come boarding or for that matter, a government school. And unlike when people display logos, one can also display logos saying, yes, I'm collaborating with Mayo or a Doon, or for that matter, Pinegrove, and so on and so forth, right? But having said this, I think so, couple of things which students are going to benefit is strongly through summer programs, which is liberated not only nationally and internationally. I think so, universities, like when we were doing the Stanford University's education program for gifted youth, James Stanton from Princeton till Mike Clapper from Harvard used to come till the metros and wanted to be in the school to impart education. This is where a hub and spoke model could be created, where the schools of boarding schools or BSAI can identify schools which can become the hub, and then the spokes could be created where a collaboration is initiated, where students can come in, teachers can come in, and maybe this could be thought of. I think so very interesting factor that BSAI can initiate. Also, parents should come in. See, what has happened is typically people have heard and learnt about these names, but they don't know what these campuses are. Whenever I come to, like, say Doon, or whenever I come to, like, say Mayo and others, whatever people see as a leisure, this kind of cities, I think so the schools have to be open up for public, maybe like a viewing also. It's absolutely a delight, and the history that the school has to come in the books also, right? So this kind of a collaboration is needed for the national territories. Parents should change their views, saying what's happening in this kind of walls is completely unique. And at least if given a chance for their kids to experience 7 days, maybe a parent or a student can come in and at least experience. Maybe I'm calling, like, when you go to Singapore, a Sentosa Island trip, it could be like trips to this legacy schools, right? It could be like an eye opener for a child, or it can really open up a future for that kid. So I strongly believe academic collaboration, the teacher collaboration, which Dr. Jagpreet really mentioned it very well. This could be opened up, liberated, and I am only hoping that BSAI can do it. There is no other hope, and I think so that's the reason we all are here together. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Bhavin, and including parents. I think that's a great idea. General Kulkarni, will there be scope for BSAI to provide consultancy services and share best practices with emerging boarding schools?
So the short answer to it in one word is yes, and a resounding yes. But I think it will not be fair if I left it there. I need to amplify a bit of this. What is the start point for this? There are two things on which we claim that we can provide this consultancy. First is experience by virtue of being legacy schools. And what experience really means is that we've made a lot of mistakes over the years, but we have learned from them. That is what is experience. We have learned from our mistakes. Over the years, we have developed a model which is now sustainable, viable, and ideally, what has happened with the better legacy schools who haven't fallen by the wayside is our capacity to identify when is the time for a reset button before events overtake us. The second is the environment. And Bhavin spoke about cities. Apart from the size of the campuses, what we are fortunate and blessed is a pollution-free environment. What people are not realizing is in today's era, the health impact on children in their growing years, the long-term health impact results or the negative consequences of which are not felt in the growing years, but in time to come will actually severely, damage their health. Because let us say if you're in the NCR region, every year there's stubble burning and this and that and what has happened. So the environment most of these legacy boarding schools are in places, in campuses where you can actually count the stars every night, unless there are clouds overhead. There is the lush green campuses. They take pride in, the flora, fauna. You have visiting birds and animals. You don't have to go to the Natural History Museum to see some of these things. So the environment is important. Why I'm saying is, how can this consultancy be of help? Because we have the facilities and then we have the faculty. When you combine the facilities and the faculty together as resource persons and a resource center, then you realize, because we can do the full range of experiential learning within the campus. Number one.
Correct.
Number two, you can arrange offsites. Sometimes schools in urban areas cannot provide offsites. So they take them for a little excursion nearby or a heritage walk or something. They can live a heritage week here, in fact. So the offsites are very important. Then there is the matter of social skills where we can provide consultancy. Because our children are used to living in a community environment, they can provide, as Jagpreet said, the student can be the teacher. They can provide peer learning to their own peers who have come from an urban environment where they are actually sometimes single children, not used to working in a community setting. We can provide survival skills because, as you know, all legacy schools take great pride in adventure. All the legacy schools have had in the past a skier, a mountaineer, a sailor. I mean, these are areas where they have excelled over the years. Adventure and community service is taken for granted. It is not seen as an event that we organize. It's a process that goes on the whole year. And therefore, this is an area of expertise on survival skills. And today, all the more reason, with India seeing things, the world being flat and Indians going all over, survival skills are very important. We have expertise in cultural sensitivity. How you conduct yourself in Japan, how you conduct yourself in Jordan are not the same. But we have the capacity to provide expertise in the area of cultural sensitivity. We have the capacity to provide a facet of pastoral care which encompasses physical health. And as you know, all boarding schools have a proper nutrition diet plan worked out for their children, which is healthy, and they don't eat only junk food or only this or only that. There's also a good mental health program where they are taught that they must, the situations are given to them in what I call controlled adversity. And they are to be taught that how they respond to a situation is the real thing. A situation is only 10% of the story. 90% is how we respond to it. And they are taught this in a controlled environment. When they know there are people around them to take care, if they fall down, somebody will pick them up. Nothing will go wrong. So I would say there are a large number of areas where the legacy boarding schools have core competence, and therefore they can provide consultancy in a big way. And I would like to add one final thing here. Not only can this be done in a physical form, but because they're all endowed with a very high grade IT infrastructure, this can also be done online to schools which are in the remote areas and perhaps not as well endowed in terms of resources and other assets. So I'm a firm believer in this. So I told you short answers, yes, but the long answer can go on for long.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have time for one quick answer. Jagpreet, it has to be a quick answer because I want to hand over to Bhavin to take questions from the audience. In my experience, boarding schools are unaware of the stringent government compliance requirements. A lot of them, I'm not talking about the schools present here, but a lot of the schools are actually ignorant of the stringent government compliance requirements. Can you just share a few of these to highlight what the problem is?
I'll give you a very small example, sir. We are unaware of the number of compliances the school come under. It's so easy to run a school, but when you start ticking the check boxes, you land up ticking more than 900 compliances in a year. This I'm talking about the lower benchmarking. It can go on to 3,500. But the problem is, how do the boarding schools know this? There are different types of schools. There are society schools, there are trust schools, there are company schools, and these compliances are made for different set of schools. A small example, if you allow me to give here, is We all do community service. Now there is a compliance. You cannot give a finished product to a community. You can't pick up a furniture and say, I put it into the class and I've done a community service. You'll have to give them where there is service. So compliance says it will come under audit. Why? Because it has not got any service in that. Number two, we have seen it in COVID. The boarding schools got a real hit. All compliances were made for the day schools. The boarding schools did not even understand how do we abide with the guidelines, how do we go with the safety protocols up to 1:30. What happens to our children after 1:30? We don't transport. We do not need guidelines for the transport. Our boys and girls are with us in the school. Small little school in a remote area, a boarding school, is unaware of these small little compliances. This is the platform, sir, BSAI, that all such schools come under the umbrella of BSAI and come under a scaffolding compliances. We take workshops. We accomplish them with a list of compliances. Not only this, are they unaware? It can even cause a large destruction tomorrow when you can find the principal of the school handcuffed for the reason he or she does not even know. So my thing is, this is very serious. This is one of the issue, I think, for all the boarding schools to stand together and address this issue, because this can be a real problem in time to come, sir.
Thank you, Jagpreet. Bhavin, I'm now going to hand over to you to take questions from the audience, and it's your show now. Thank you very much. Over to Bhavin.
Thank you, sir. This is first time ever that as a student, I'm going to question all the headmasters. But please, all the headmasters, forgive me, because for one simple reason, my voice is there, but the questions I'm reading is from the Facebook, and we have got fabulous responses on Facebook. First and foremost, I would like to give some comments. And obviously, the first comment, I think so, Dilip Thakur is watching since the beginning. And he's a firm belief that boarding schools give sports and games opportunity which day school can never give. And cooperation and leadership life skills are best learned on the playing field. And no other example than Dilip himself. So that comes from Dilip. We have a interesting comment from Mr. Mukhya saying St. Paul's School, Darjeeling is missing in the association. It's the oldest residential school in Asia. So my appeal to the board would be to, I think so probably, can I just add on, and probably all the members can unmute and answer saying, is the membership open for all other boarding schools? Can anyone comment on that?
It is open, of course it's open. There are certain criteria that we are looking at. There's a form which is to be filled in, and then we do a visit. I won't call it an inspection, a visit, because we're all good schools, and then we offer membership, and then it's up to the school to accept it. Okay, so that was for St. Paul's. Okay, here is a question, and I think so we'll keep it liberal, and probably any panelist or a BSCI board member can answer it. This is from Mr. Shekri. My question to the panel is, what could be said to be a right age for a student to start his or her journey at a boarding school? Who would like to take it?
Okay, may I?
Yeah, ma'am, please.
Yeah. Okay, so I started my boarding school journey at the age 9. I went to a boarding school in grade 4 at 9. I think it is the best age to go because you need some time to settle. You need to give yourself. So when you go young, you integrate easily into the boarding life. And by the time you are 2 or 3 years into the boarding school, you have made your place there. You get into the groove. You start enjoying the activities. If you come in grade 7 or 8, by the time you're in grade 9, 10, what happens is that you start looking at what your future is. So the real essence and what the boarding school can give you happens when you've gotten into grade 4, and then slowly by the time you're in 6, 7, 8, you are able to pick up all that the boarding schools have to offer.
Got it. So I think so.
Just make a short comment there, Bhavin.
Sure.
It's like this. If you say that the idea of sending your child to a boarding school is a good idea for what it provides, then the longer he stays in that school, the better. So it depends on which grade the school starts from. The longer the child is there, the more opportunities he or she will get. So I think it's a no-brainer. I completely agree with Sangeeta.
Got it.
Bhavin, can I make a comment here?
Sure, sure.
It's been my experience, and my fellow colleagues who are on the panel here will agree with that. There's a growing trend amongst the parents, especially in India, of not sending their children early to the boarding schools. They've been noticing in all big, great boarding schools in India that when it comes to grade 2, 3, 4, 5, there are very few students who are coming to the schools. Grade 6 and 7, yes, the number goes up. So this is another challenge the boarding schools face in India, that the parents, and you did mention about these children coming from metros, bigger cities, where they're mollycoddled and every comfort is taken care of. And parents don't want to put their children at discomfort early in their life. With the result, by the time they come, when they are almost 13, 14, they already have a mindset where adjustment to a boarding school, I won't say it's impossible, but becomes difficult.
Interesting. Okay, now there are some questions which I'm going to consolidate, and here are some kind of tough and some controversial. I'm going to take one after the other. Okay, here is again for the membership question that comes from Mr. Pillai from Coimbatore SSVM Group. Would BSAI open up membership for Deccan boarding schools also? Sumer sir, can you answer that?
We are first going to have membership for purely boarding schools. And then if the community of boarding schools which comes together at the end of this exercise feels that we should include day-come boarding schools, it's possible to have them as not full members, but as associate members, so that they also benefit. But we don't want to dilute the entire experience of a purely boarding school.
Correct. I think so. That's a fair move to do that. Okay, here is the question by Mr. Shahini from Agra. Can BSAI think of having one single test for intake of all boarding school? I think so. This is coming from a parent which has to take multiple tests, unlike various other universities. So, is there a chance that can be consolidated? Yeah, I mean something like for boarding entrance. Can there be a consolidated?
Jagpreet, why don't you answer this question?
Well, if you ask me, it used to be there. I remember when I was teaching at Mayo, and Mayo used to organize a common test for Gwalior, for Delhi College, for Mayo, and for one other school. I have not remembered. Scindia. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we are still doing it. We are still doing it.
Yes. So this is like a CUET, which we are talking about. The common university entrance test. We can have common public school. This is what BSAI will think. These are the agenda points in time to come when the body will consolidate. We all will come on a one platform. We all will have a collaborated effort. These are the questions which will come, and we will love to deliberate and come out with a decision. I think this is a very, very good idea.
Thank you. I think so. The parent is optimistic that she's going to get some good positive result. Okay, there is this question from Mr. Nishant Delhi. Can BSAI put pressure on government to classify boarding school into a special category? So is there a special status that one can fight for? You guys have all the muscles. Can you do it for a special status? No, it's not technically possible, right?
I don't think so.
We are not a union. We are not influencers. We are creating this platform for a reason. And we are not here to advocate right or wrong. We all boarding school heads, we all boarding school for the nuances, what we are seeing. We are addressing issues for our own schools. We are gathering the like-minded schools, and we are addressed by the set of people in England who actually started the trend of our boarding schools, and to scaffold us and to take us into the right direction. But if people are thinking we are going to be the voice to the government and we are going to be a unionized, no way. We are just a platform to collaborate everyone.
Yeah, may I just interrupt here? Bhavin, in any case, education is on the concurrent list. Correct. And many of the decisions taken are taken by state governments. Correct. So, you have each of the schools across the country will have unique problems with their own state governments. So we cannot deal with all the states. We can certainly try and influence the central government to try and accept that boarding schools do play an important role in the growth of the country.
I'm just thinking wild, and this is where I think so. We have discussed it before. If suppose BSAI have the benchmark hallmark and prove it by way of outcomes, by way of the community service, all the attributes that a boarding school does, and BSAI, for whatever reason, over a period of time, create some kind of a benchmark, which today or tomorrow the global community accepts. Can it be like, excluded from this so-called the concurrent subject? It means, can you put a global pressure? Say, for example, unlike many of the programs that have been done under UNESCO, UNICEF, and so on and so forth, and people who are a part of it, they get tax exemptions, correct? So a global body can have some influence. If certain characteristics, you build it up to a certain benchmark. That could be.
It can happen, and we'll need someone like you to advise us.
No, surely this will happen, and that is something on the cards. This question now, I think so. Sangeeta ma'am did answer this, but that's from Ms. Aditi from Barga. Would BSAI start teacher training programs, especially for residential school and mainly for pastoral care?
That is where the gap is.
Correct.
And that is one of the main agenda points of, if I may have the permission of the president to say so.
Absolutely,
That is one of the main agenda points. That is where we see the teachers training institutes lacking completely. So yes.
So would this be like a hybrid model where BSAI will go to the institutes needed, or they have to come?
We could, if I may, if we could have internships, we could have teachers coming into our schools for an internship program to understand the working culture of a boarding school. As you said, it is a vocation. You don't come into a boarding school and think that you're going to go home at 1:30. What do you bring to the table? Are you good at music? Which sport do you play? So when you go into a teacher training institute, we will tell you that if you're preparing to come to a boarding school, then these are the points that you have to look at. And once you come into internship, once you train house mothers, matrons, dames, house wardens, there is a whole gamut of training,
and heads,
and of course heads.
Yeah.
And of course the mental well-being and emotional well-being of the teachers and the heads, because understand that if I am unhappy and if I do not have the grit to be able to take the pressure, then what am I going to do? How am I going to lead my school? And if my teachers are not happy, then how are they going to lead a team of happy students? So it's
Bhavin, sorry, one sec, Jagpreet, one sec. Bhavin, what would explain it is that we actually have a person who is head of training, and that is Mr. Vinay Pandey, who is a former principal, former headmaster of Lawrence School, Sana. And we have given this big responsibility to him because we are taking training so seriously that we want this to be very much part of BSAI.
Fabulous. I think so. That's again a need of an hour. Okay, I'm just last comment question, which is this is a googly, by the way, from Mr. Balasubramaniam, and the googly says, can BSAI control alumni of boarding school? I don't know whether anyone wants to answer that. Whether anyone want to answer? Okay, that's General Kulkarni. Go for it, sir.
Why should you want to control them?
Probably
we have trained our alumni. Yeah. To be unique entities, all of their own, and go out into this world. Have you sent them out to then control them? No.
No, so probably BSAI can have some.
If the nature of the question is that, is there a situation of confrontation between the alumni and the school? Yes, sometimes it happens because everybody has this feeling that in our time, things used to be like this, which is universal to every situation in the world. Ki hamare time pe the world was better. So it's okay. But I don't think the boarding school conceptually want to control their alumni, then the whole system went wrong somewhere.
They don't want to have a sausage factory.
Thanks a lot.
With the permission of the chair, may I just pitch in here? You see, boarding schools are about self-reliance. It's about independence. So why should we want to control minds? And the point is, we train kids to be good citizens. We train them to be independent and self-reliant. At the same time, we train them to be responsible citizens. So I'm with General Kulkarni on this, that why should we want to control them? It's not about controlling minds. It's about enriching human capital.
Absolutely. No, that was a good answer for the googly. We have hit a 6. Thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. And over to you, Dr. Simar Singh, to just to conclude the webinar. This was a fab. I really enjoyed it. This was a great gathering. Good evening for all of us, and all the viewers are really going rave about opinions. Still, it's going on. The tickering is still going on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bhavin. Thank you so much, all the panelists. I think we have covered a fair amount of ground within an hour, which is not an easy thing to do. But yes, I hope the audience has enjoyed it. And if they have any further questions, they are most welcome to write to either to me or more appropriately to any of the heads of the schools where their children may be aspiring to go. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.